Hey everybody, Steve the Amateur Historian coming to you from downtown, pretty close to the waterfront. I'm on First Avenue, trying to get to the intersection of First and Clay, which I think is a little, I think this is First and Jefferson. I'm hoping it's not right up here because this is a lot of noise. Not that, you don't come into downtown Portland and presume you're going to get hit with noise. But anyway, trying to get to the intersection of First and Clay because I have actually a very interesting story to bring to you, not quite like the others that I've done so far on a new episode of Historic Murders of Portland. I thought I'd end up back in this area again, probably because I've done I don't know, this is gonna be like my third or fourth video coming to the vicinity of like a 2-block radius up here. Still a lot of noise. It is summertime construction, can't cross here. Anyway, here I am everybody, this is the intersection of First and Clay. First going this way, Clay crossing, and the incident that happened occurred at what is currently regarded as 1500 Southwest First Avenue. So it's literally on this block stretch between here and the next street up, which is Market, like right in the middle of this block, is where this crime would have occurred. And what this was the murder of a guy. I highly doubt I'm going to pronounce his name accurately, so I'm going to spell his name out first. His first name was spelled His first name was spelled C-I-A-C-C-H-I-N-O. So I'm going, very Italian name. I'm going with the idea that his first name is pronounced Ciacchino, or Ciacchino, Ciacchino. It could be any of those, but Ciacchino sounds right to me. I don't know why. Anyway, Ciacchino Alari, last name A-L-A-R-I, a lot easier to pronounce. I'll probably just refer to him as Alari the rest of the video. On December 23rd, 1907, just a couple days for Christmas, a lot of these stories happen right around Christmas time, which is troubling. Along this stretch of First Avenue, probably, see where this tree is right here? That's probably about where where Alari would have met up with a former criminal compatriot of his. Is that the right word? I don't know. A former pal of his named Nicola Emilia. Another very powerful Italian name. They met up here at a restaurant. These guys were kind of criminal partners, or at least they had been for a long time, but they started kind of growing apart. Not like you would in a relationship, but more in a criminal enterprise kind of way. They kind of started going there. It seemed like they were still committing crimes together, but they were doing it in more of a well, we're making money doing what we're doing, so I guess I'll deal with the fact that I have to see your dumbass face all the time. I think that was probably the atmosphere that they were working on. And of course, it was a matter of a recent crime that brought the two together in this space behind me and would ultimately bring about Ciacchino Alari's murder. So essentially what happened was the two men, Emilia and Alari, were meeting up together, and again at a restaurant that was probably one time in this area right here. The night before, December 22nd, they had apparently, they'd obtained money illegally. It seemed like they had robbed someplace. They'd robbed a store, robbed a bank, I don't know. But they'd come to $300. And apparently an altercation began as to how they were going to divvy that money out. Maybe one wanted more than half, maybe they did more work so felt they deserved more. I don't really know the circumstances. The newspapers didn't delve that deep into them, but essentially an altercation happened at around 9 p.m. December 23rd, right here. Nicola Emilia gunned down Ciacchino Alari. And it was several days before the police could put their attention on Nicola Emilia, because it seemed like the only witnesses that were there were other people that were like, fellow criminals and accomplices to them, who of course they don't want to say anything because they're criminals, and they just were witnesses to a shooting right here that happened as a result of a misunderstanding or a disagreement in terms of money that they had just stolen. I mean, who would want to go to the police as criminals when that is the scenario? But there were two guys, a guy by the name of Alari and another guy whose name I think was like Inez, or it's like Insize. I don't know. There's too many names. There's too many crazy names. I'm not even trying anymore. But they were two witnesses that ultimately ended up helping the police determine that it was Nicola Emilia that had fired the shots on this block to kill Alari. And they were both held as witnesses and as accomplices in the crime. And of course, the moment it happened, Nicola Emilia split, as they all do. And it was a gunfight that happened out here. I mean, it probably freaked people out that were in this vicinity, but like right on this sidewalk stretch behind me. The story kind of came out because, again, someone gets killed and you think, okay, that person killed that person is 100% wrong. But then it started coming out through the witnesses, who again seemed to be more closely associated to Emilia than they were to Alari, so they'd be more intended to side with him in this case. Apparently, while they were at the restaurant over here, Alari threatened to kill Emilia and then got up and said F this and walked out. And as he walked out on the street, and I think started walking this direction towards where I am, Nicola Emilia got pissed, pulled out a gun, walked out on the sidewalk and gunned down Alari right here along this sidewalk. And of course, took off. If Alari was walking in this direction and was gunned down up over here, I can only assume that Emilia would have taken off in that direction, probably. Maybe would have ran down and across. I don't know what was standing over here back in the, over 100 years ago. But whatever the case, it seems likely that Emilia bailed south, bailed east, bailed west. But he had the benefit of the fact that the only witnesses, the real witnesses to the crime scene, and by the way, the restaurant belonged to Nicola Emilia, so why they wouldn't target him immediately as an accomplice who had bad blood with the guy who just got gunned down in front of his own restaurant, why he wouldn't have become an immediate suspect, I don't know, but maybe he was. They just weren't acting enough. But because they didn't really start targeting him till several days later, when these accomplices of his finally, expressed, yeah, he did it, Emilia had like almost a week's start in terms of escaping, and he probably figured he was screwed, like he had to split town. And that was seemingly where the story was almost doomed to end, because Nicola Emilia got a weak head start on authorities, and nobody knows what happened to him. He bailed, he split town, or established a new identity and went over here, went over there. Nobody knows. And again, mind you, this was 1907 when this crime occurred, and he was just gone. So it was kind of a mixed bag. There was no mystery as to what happened. Nicola Emilia was guilty of murder, and it seemed to be a pretty clear-cut case of first-degree murder. Alari was walking away, leaving the establishment, and Emilia came out after him and gunned him down in cold blood on the street. So there was no question as to, likely what Nicola Emilia would be charged with if he was ever captured. But I mean, a decade would go by and nobody knew what happened. It kind of, I think in the city of Portland, law enforcement, they just accepted, we know who did it. We don't know where he is, but at least we can call the case closed. Because we can't find the guy, it doesn't mean that the case is still a mystery. It's a case closed scenario. Well, you fast forward a little bit. May 7th, 1917, some 10 years later, and Nicola Emilia is reportedly captured in British Columbia. Supposedly he was in an establishment or some setting where there were people around that could hear him talk, and apparently Nicola Emilia was in Vancouver, British Columbia, and he was apparently talking about details of this particular crime, or at least something related to it, that an informant randomly happened to be in the area overheard. So he was immediately apprehended, and the Portland authorities were called and said, hey, are you looking for this guy on a murder? So law enforcement has to be elated at this point. 10 years have passed and they're finally going to get their man, and they send Emilia back to Portland to be, you know, taken in, identified, and finally charged for this murder that happened back in 1907. Problem is, when he arrives, they realize it's not him. The guy that was captured in British Columbia was later identified as a Vincenzo Arcuri. It's a different guy altogether. So what the circumstances were, what this supposed informant, why there was just happened to be an informant in the right place at the right time, is kind of intriguing, kind of bizarre. But, you know, I don't know what details he supposedly heard, but either, you know, Arcuri, all these names I'm trying to remember, either he had some knowledge, maybe he bumped into Nicola Emilia at some time, I don't really know, maybe he got details from him, it's hard to say, but whatever the case, authorities were so convinced that they'd nabbed the right guy 10 years later, and then they bring the guy back and it's just another guy of Italian descent. So, you know, he was cut loose. They found out Arcuri wasn't even in America when the crime happened, and I mean, it's not like they were going to turn around and say he did it all of a sudden. They knew who did it. And he was released and allowed to get sent back to Vancouver, British Columbia. And that was the last thing, the last article, last piece of information I ever found regarding the whereabouts of Nicola Emilia, the killer of Ciacchino, Alari, back over on First Avenue between Clay and Market Streets. So we still don't know. We don't know what happened to this guy. He got a couple days head start, and that's all we know. And as far as the city of Portland, law enforcement, what have you, prosecutors, as far as they're concerned, the last time Nicola Emilia was ever seen alive anywhere around this city ever again was when he was running down the street, fleeing the vicinity of his restaurant where he shot Ciacchino Alari. And as far as we know, he hasn't been seen since. Probably fled to another state, you know, back in those days you could flee, you know, a few hundred, maybe 1,000 miles away, and sometimes you get lucky, you get far away enough. People don't know about what's going on crime-wise in Portland. And you just relocate, you start over, and, you know, it may be rough, but at least you still got your freedom, I guess. And so, we know who killed Alari. We just never got justice for it because, I mean, obviously at this point, Nicola Emilia is long gone. So that's where we stand today in this murder case of Ciacchino Alari. And that's it from downtown Portland. Thank you again, as always, so much for watching. Remember, as always, like, share, subscribe, comment, la-di-da-di-da-di-da. Patreon is always there as an option too, if you want to show me your deep love of my content. And I'm getting blasted by the wind. Fortunately, it's coming from the west, so I think I'm obstructing it. Anyway, till next time, from downtown, this is Steve the Amateur Historian getting blown away. with another episode of Historic Murders of Portland. Catch you later.